So picture this, June 7th, 1992. On a quiet suburban street in Springfield, Missouri, a house sits empty. But it shouldn't be. 3 women who were there the night before have vanished. They're just gone, leaving everything behind, kicking off a mystery that would puzzle investigators for decades.
And these are the women we're talking about. Cheryl Levitt, her daughter Susie Streeter, and Susie's friend Stacy McCall. Their faces have become absolutely iconic in the world of true crime. In this explainer, we're going to dig into the night they disappeared, the incredibly frustrating investigation that followed, and a potential breakthrough that surfaced more than 30 years later.
All right, so to really get a grip on what happened here, we have to rewind. We have to go back to the night before anyone even knew they were missing. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, one that took a totally inexplicable turn.
And what's so wild is just how normal it all was. I mean, it was a classic high school graduation night, hopping between parties, hanging out with friends. Susie and Stacy's decision to head to Cheryl's house wasn't some big plan. It was just a practical, last-minute choice that ended up being the very last thing anyone knows for sure that they did.
And listen, they weren't just looking for a place to crash. They had plans. Big, fun, exciting plans for the very next morning. A trip to a water park to keep the celebration going. They just needed to get some sleep first. And that detail, it's so important because it tells you they had every intention of waking up and starting their day.
So, the next morning rolls around. Friends start showing up at the house on Delmar Street, and what they walk into is just unsettling. It's a scene that looked perfectly normal on the surface but was also deeply, deeply wrong.
The very first red flag, the front door was unlocked, and the house was silent. There should have been music playing, the sounds of 3 people getting ready for a fun day out, but instead, there was nothing, just an eerie silence. Nobody was there.
And this is really the heart of the whole mystery. It's not about what was taken, it's about what was left behind. Their cars were in the driveway. Their purses, with wallets, cash, keys, everything, were just sitting right there. Cheryl was a heavy smoker, and even her cigarettes were left behind. This just doesn't look like people who decided to leave. It looks like people who were taken.
And then there's this. A friend, checking the answering machine, finds this bizarre, chilling message. Nobody remembers the exact words, but they all said it was a man's voice, and it was just unsettling. And in a move that is just heartbreaking, a friend, trying to be helpful, deleted the message to make room for new calls, erasing what might have been the single most important clue in the entire case. Just gone.
And to make an awful situation even worse, by the time the police were finally called, the house had been swarming with people. Friends, family, all worried, all walking through rooms, touching things, cleaning things up. Any potential evidence, fingerprints, DNA, fibers, it was all completely compromised. The investigation was almost impossible before it even officially began.
So with no physical evidence, no real crime scene to work with, what do? Well, investigators had to cast a really wide net, looking at anyone and everyone who might have had a connection to Cheryl, Susie, or Stacy.
And then, out of the blue, the investigation takes this shocking turn. A phone call comes in from all the way down in Florida. It's from the family of another victim, and they're connecting this disappearance to a convicted killer who, it turns out, was living right there in Springfield. I mean, can you even imagine being the detective who picks up that phone call? 1 minute, you've got nothing, and the next, you get this, a name, a very dangerous name, and he's local. That one call just completely shifted the focus of the entire investigation.
So who was this guy, Robert Craig Cox? Well, his resume was alarming, to say the least. A violent past, a murder conviction that got overturned on a technicality. He had even been on death row. And his job? It took him into yards and neighborhoods all over town. He later even admitted he was near Cheryl's house around that time.
But just as quickly as this incredible lead appeared, poof, it seemed to vanish. Cox had an alibi. He said he was at church with his girlfriend, and she backed up his story. And with absolutely no physical evidence to tie him to the house on Delmar Street, the police, well, they had to move on. Their most promising lead just went cold.
And for years and years, that's pretty much where the story stalled out. The case slowly faded from the national headlines, but it never ever disappeared from public memory, and certainly not from the minds of the investigators working on it.
We're talking about more than 3 decades. For over 30 years, the faces of these 3 women have represented one of the most agonizing, persistent cold cases in American history. 30 years of questions, of theories, and of painful dead ends.
And this wasn't just a local tragedy. Oh no, it became a true crime legend. It's a case that people discuss with the same intensity as some of the most famous unsolved mysteries out there. It became a puzzle that an entire generation of armchair detectives have tried to solve.
But now, after all this time, something new has come to light. A new book, written by actor Dylan McDermott and a former FBI special agent, is making a really bold claim. They say they've found the resolution to the mystery.
And what's so compelling here is that they're promising new information, not just another retelling of the same old facts. The authors claim they have new investigative breakthroughs that can finally shed light on what really happened to Cheryl, Susie, and Stacy.
So that leaves us with this massive question hanging in the air. For over 30 years, this case has been this painful, open wound for so many people. So are we actually on the verge of finally knowing what happened in that house on Delmar Street? Or is this just another chapter in a tragic story that might never have an ending?